Yesterday I had some free time, so I bought a power washer. And I tried to power wash my deck, which was a bit of a scary experience. On my deck, I have a statue of St. Francis. It's an old statue that's passed down through the family. This stone statue had become covered with lots of grime and algae and dirt, and I hadn't really even noticed it until I started to power wash the guy. And then all of that dirt and grime came off, and Francis looked so good. When there is a powerful saint who speaks words from God, we often don't understand that saint when that saint is speaking in his or her own time. People usually think they're very holy, but also very crazy. Like Lady Julian of Norwich, she had this vision of God holding this small circular thing in the palm of God's hand, and everyone thought she was nuts. Well, now we know that was the planet. Likewise, everyone thought St. Francis was crazy in his day. He would talk to the birds and the animals, and he called the sun brother sun and the moon sister moon, and people said, wow, he's nuts. But then as the centuries pass, we begin to understand a little bit of what they're saying. But then when we actually really begin to understand, and they start to really kind of challenge us, then we do another thing with saints. We make them into statues and put them in our garden. Or we put them on the walls of our nursery. Or we bury poor St. Joseph upside down in the ground when we want to sell a house. I think there's a part of us that loves the saints, but wants to kind of tame them and collect them, rather than really listening to them. When I was a child, I loved the book, The Jungle Book. Have any of you read The Jungle Book? Do you remember that story? It's a great story about a little boy named Mowgli, and his mom and dad have been killed by a tiger in the jungles of India. Mowgli, as a little baby, is saved by animals, and he's raised to be part of a wolf pack. He also has two kind of chief advisors and mentors, a panther named Bagheera and a bear named Baloo. Mowgli thinks that he's a wolf, except he notices that he's shaped kind of differently and that he can't run nearly as fast as the other wolves. He gets a best friend, though. His best friend's name is Boot, and his best friend is an albino runt in the wolf pack. So both Boot and Mowgli look kind of different, and they get made fun of a lot, but they love each other. They love each other, and they joke, and they laugh, and they play, and they start growing up. Now there's this thing in the pack where you can't be a full member of the pack until the running. You have to be able to run and keep up with the pack when they're being chased by a predator. But Mowgli can't run fast enough. The tiger who killed his parents returns to the jungle. Shere Khan is his name. And Bagheera, the panther, meets with Mowgli and says, Mowgli, you need to leave the jungle now. The tiger has returned and it's no longer safe for you here. Mowgli says, but this is my home. And Bagheera says, we've called you brother and you are part of our family, but you are not a wolf. You are a man cub. Mowgli is returned to the village of humans, where he tries to learn to get along. And there are parts that he loves, like a warm bath and good food. There is one white man in the village who is a hunter and who has guns. Mowgli admires him amidst all the brown people who look like Mowgli. And he goes into the tent of the hunter one afternoon, and he sees on the hunter's wall the head of Boot, his best friend. And the hunter says, "Oh yeah, I just got that one, my first albino wolf." Mowgli rushes out of the tent into the jungle, weeping. He realizes that he is not just human, he is part wolf. They are his family. And with one foot in two worlds, he learns how to lead and how to usher in a period of peace. There is a great legend about St. Francis that he too tamed a wolf. There was a village of Gubbio in Italy, and there was a crazy wild wolf who was eating the children and scaring everyone. Francis approached the wolf and knelt down, patted the wolf, and the wolf put his paw in Francis's hand. Francis said, "Let's make a deal, and we can have peace. The village will feed you, and you don't eat its children." And the wolf agreed, and they lived in peace and harmony for many years. Francis knew something that we have forgotten, that the animals are our family. I used to teach my congregations that nature was an icon, and we could look at it and see God's handiwork. But I've changed my mind. Nature is not just an icon. Nature is us. In the Episcopal Church, we embrace science and reason. And there is wonderful concepts in science that tell us about the intricacies of this world, including the concept of evolution. But there's a new word now. It is called co-evolution. You see, we realize now that creatures impact the earth and the earth impacts creatures, that we develop together, that we're all part of one creation of God, so intertwined that we literally form and shape each other. There is a new book called Becoming Earth by Ferris Joyber. It tells us about how the whole earth is alive and changing constantly. Take the little earthworm, millions of them form the soil that makes things grow for us. That our earth, which we thought was dead rock at the center, is alive with microbiomes and creatures that form and shape it and shape us. That a whale, when it dies, sinks to the bottom of the ocean and becomes an oasis upon which all these creatures feed and thrive. They call it a whale fall, nurturing the oceans. How there is a flower called the bee orchid. This flower was trying to attract a certain kind of bee, so at the center of the flower, there is this part that looks exactly like a bee now. How the insects shape the flowers and the flowers shape the insects, and how we influence the earth and the earth influences us. But over the centuries, we've forgotten Francis's influence, You see, Francis decided not to own anything. He lived simply. He slept outside. He praised God, loved everything that was given to him. But we want to possess. We want to take. And Jesus warned us. He said, be careful of greed, for it can distort you. It can kill you. Look at the story from the book of Acts. Here's a man who sells a field, and he gives a portion of it to the people of the way, the followers of Jesus, but he lies about what it was worth, and he holds it back. He's not honest, and he dies. When we keep thinking that the earth is something that we can possess and consume like an object, a part of us begins to die. And the earth is reacting to our behavior. Look at the storms that are upon us. Look at the island of plastic that sits in the ocean. It is time for us to wake up, to power wash St. Francis and remember who he really is and was. For the power of saints influences us today, and we need him because the sun is our brother and the moon is our sister. Until we understand that, we will not fully know how to live in harmony with this beautiful world that God has made for us to dwell in. We will not know how to truly give thanks until we learn that we are part of God's creation, and all of nature is part of us. Amen.